Your first reaction to the press conference out of Beijing yesterday?
We have to admit that the comments are relatively mild, moderate, right? They didn't spin the thing into some Hong Kong independence fight or alleging, as usual, you would have thought. There are foreign forces behind the protesters and that sort of allegations. But then there's no attempt to heal the rift. They're conducting essentially some binary division, separation. They support Carrie Lam and the police force, and if you're not with them, you're against them, and i.e. You could be the perpetrators, you're the baddies, and this sort of division, it's not very desirable, is it? It seems that the Beijing officials don't know Hong Kong, or they simply don't want to know. Or the reports they have on Hong Kong have been doctored here before they got sent up. So we don't know what really is happening, except one key message is very clear, and that is police force can solve the problem in Hong Kong, which is actually a political problem. At the end of the day, what do the young want? Now, initially, Hong Kong has had loads of the political dissatisfaction, the fact that we lack the democracy, true democracy, that our candidates should be able to run in elections without censorship from Beijing. And we were promised that sort of one man, one vote more than 10 years ago. And we're now in 2019. And this no China extradition bill became the last straw for the young in particular. And so things have come from there. And yet, at the moment, we're seeing that, we resolutely support Carrie Lam, and you just listen to her. But she hasn't been doing anything.
But does this go beyond Hong Kong's control now? These violent clashes, the unrest that we've seen, does it now warrant a time where Beijing needs to step in and to defuse the situation?
I hope they would do it without using military means, of course. They really should tell Carrie Lam, if not telling her to go, they should tell her to try to solve this political problem using political means. And Beijing should understand that ultimately we just want them to cut us some slack on the democracy front. Show us that this one country, two systems promise is not just a sham, and they do mean that Hong Kongers are supposed to enjoy a high degree of autonomy.
Claudia, it's Tom here in Shenzhen. As you look at the situation now and what you've heard from Beijing, how do you think ultimately this plays out?
I'm rather worried at the moment. I mean, yesterday, the Beijing officials in charge didn't quite actually hint at using military means, deploying PLA into the streets of Hong Kong. But then if this goes on, and the way they put it, that the police force is the solution to the Hong Kong problem at the moment, I just don't know how this is going to end. Ultimately, because the young are so determined, the effort is so unrelenting. You don't have to agree with the way they behave, but then you can understand the frustration and the anger and the hostility, because they are fighting for Hong Kong, and it's their Hong Kong, their future. And so we need to understand, and where does this lead us? I just can't tell. I hope Carrie Lam will come out and talk more reasonably. She calls herself a mother, so the talk truly like a mother would treat her young. Right, but every time she comes out, she simply angers more people. You get the impression. And she would put on, or tried very hard to put on this very authoritative face that she means business, and there's no nonsense with her governance and so on. And I just don't know what she's been thinking while in hiding, as far as I could see. She's been hiding away.
Let's take the longer term view. I'm just looking at this objectively because you brought up the young. These are the same people who'll be around when the 50-year window expires.
Exactly.
In 2047. The reason I bring that up is if, in theory, Hong Kong just becomes any other mainland city, if it's not the extradition bill, if it's not, it's going to be the curriculum or hospital beds or milk formula. In some way, all of these things that symbolize Beijing, people will push back on. As a leader, and yourself as well, how do you think Hong Kong should prepare approaching 2047 when, frankly, maybe all of this disappears? Why do we need democracy? That goes away anyway.
That's a terrifying thought. And indeed, I always tell the young, you're talking about 2047. It's well, slightly less than 30 years away. And people like me won't be around anymore. So you have to fight for your future. And at the moment, what's really worrying is that they say they're prepared to die for this fight. And it's so unsettling, this thought. They couldn't care less. The attitude is one of, we have nothing to lose. I was told that only 2 days ago, Sunday night, many of the young, well, not a lot, but some of them were actually on the front line fighting against the police, complete with their death notes, their own suicide kind of notes in their rucksack, on their bags. And what does that tell you? So they wouldn't listen if you try to calm them down and say, look, time's on your side, just relax, be water. You have heard of this slogan, right? There's
Bruce Lee.
Bruce Lee, Kung Fu, yeah? Be hard as ice and be volatile, or, you know, as steam. But then on the other hand, they thought they have this, not hero, martyr.
But does disrupting traffic and MTR, delaying people's commutes, defacing the national emblem, does this actually bring more harm than good?
Well, defacing the national emblem is very rude, but then I do believe in some American court case I've read that the national flag, the national emblem, should still protect the people who hold them in contempt. Okay, that's maybe a legal or legalistic view. But then when it comes to disrupting traffic, I know it's very inconvenient. I was a bit worried this morning before I came in. I seriously set aside much more time than I would have done to make sure that I'm not late for you, right? And such inconvenience, but this bit of daily inconvenience, when compared to their fight for their future, it's really nothing. I'll put up with it.